This video explains how you can connect with your lab instructor to ask questions or work in a lab group with other students. So this course is set up so that you can do the labs completely asynchronously if you'd like to. So you've got the full week to work on your lab, and then it's due at midnight on Sunday night. If you want to work on your own, whenever it's convenient to you, and just make sure that you hand it in by the deadline, that's totally okay. So you don't need to actually attend the lab periods if you don't want to. However, during the regularly scheduled lab period, we've got this lab period video chat up at the top. Your lab instructor will be here, and so you can treat this as a drop-in question period. So that's how you contact your lab instructor, but what if you would like to work with other students? That is, you'd like to come to the lab period, the regularly scheduled lab period, and work in a lab group with several other students so that you can talk to them. How do you do that? Well, scrolling down the page, we've got all of these click to open sections, one per lab in general. And up at the very top, we've got this group study rooms section. So let's click into that and see what's there. So in this section, we've got all of these video chats. So study room 1, study room 2, study room 3, and so on. These are video chats. You can talk to other students there. However, you'll notice that right now they're all restricted. You can't join this unless you're signed into a lab group. So how do you sign into a lab group? Well, that's this link up here at the top. So you click on this Sign into a Lab Group link, and it takes you to this page. So for example, I can click into Lab Group 1, and down at the bottom there's a button that says Save My Choice. So I click that, and now it has signed me into Lab Group 1. And by the way, there's also this link up at the top that says Show Group Members. So you can click that and see the names of everybody who's signed into that group. So say there was a bunch of people signed into groups right now, and you realize, ooh, my friend is signed into Lab Group 3, I'd like to join them. Down at the bottom, you can also click Remove My Choice, and it removes you from the lab group that you had been signed into, and now you can click a different one, click Save My Choice, and then you'll appear in the new group. So the lab groups accept up to 4 students, but I actually consider 3 students to be the ideal group size. So what I recommend you do is you come in here and sign into lab group 1 until it's full up to 3 students. And if it's full up to 3 students, sign into lab group 2 instead until it's full up to 3, and then you'd sign into lab group 3 and so on. So generally speaking, try to fill them up to 3 students each. And by the way, if you're in the very last lab group and it doesn't look like anyone else is going to show up, go ahead and sign yourself out of that lab group and just sign into the 4th slot on one of the groups that already has students in it, so that you don't have to work by yourself. So as I said, 3 students is ideal as far as I'm concerned, but it's totally okay to work in a group of 4 to make sure that everybody has a partner. So now I'm signed into lab group 3. Let's go back to the main page and see what effect that has. So scrolling down, you now see that I have access now to study room 3 because I'm in lab group 3. So I can click on this and join this session, and so can my lab partners. So this gives you a private video chat where you and your lab partners can work together. So going back to the main page, the idea here is that if you want to treat the regularly scheduled lab period as a synchronous lab period, where you're working with other students on the lab during that 3-hour lab period, then what you would do is you'd come down here, sign yourself into a lab group, and then you and your partners would work together during the lab period in your study room. You can also leave this study room and come and ask questions of your lab instructor if you want to. Another thing to keep in mind is that Moodle is going to remember which lab group you were signed into from week to week. So if on the first week you sign into lab group 3, then when you come back the next week, you're still going to be signed into lab group 3 and able to access study room 3. So you can keep working with the same people from week to week, or you can switch to a different lab group anytime you want to. Now, if later in the semester you decide that you're okay working by yourself, you don't want to work in a lab group anymore, then please remember to come back and sign yourself out of your lab group, just so that your partners aren't expecting you anymore, and somebody else could sign themselves into that group if they wanted to. Going back to the main page, just to recap, if you want to work asynchronously by yourself and just email questions to your lab instructor, that's totally okay. Alternately, if you'd like to just drop in and ask questions to your lab instructor live, you can do that during the regularly scheduled lab period using this lab period video chat. And if you want to treat the labs as synchronous, that is, you would like to work with lab partners during the lab period, you would come into the group study rooms, click the link to sign yourself into a lab group, and then you and your partners can work together in these video chats. And two more things that I haven't mentioned yet. If you scroll down, right at the bottom, there is one study room that is open access. Anybody can join that right away. So if you want to have a big lab party of 17 students, everybody could join this one. That's totally okay. And down at the very bottom, I've put a forum here so that you can contact other students if you'd like to arrange a time to work other than during the lab period. So for example, if you wanted to find study partners to work with on the weekend, you could post in the forum and then everybody in the lab section is going to get that message. So hopefully this is going to make it easy for you to work however is most comfortable for you. So you can work asynchronously by yourself or synchronously with lab partners or any variation on that. So if you have any questions about any of this, do feel free to email your lab instructor.